Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a look at the 1956 film Forbidden Planet. This is episode 379. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen them. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Savaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
I never partake of it myself. Promotes rust.
Promotes rust. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello, how are you guys?
I mean, I'm doing well, but I've seen you, so how? Okay. As we said, 1956's Forbidden Planet. Now, I don't know. The listener may be listening to this because they want to learn about Forbidden Planet. We will be doing spoilers, but maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't seen it in a long time. Maybe you've just seen the amazing posters and art. But this is a 1956 American science fiction film from MGM. It was a huge hit. It was produced by Nicholas Nayfack, directed by Fred Wilcox, and it stars Leslie Nielsen, Anne Francis, and Walter Pidgeon. Shot in beautiful Eastmancolor and CinemaScope. It is considered one of the great science fiction films of the 50s and a precursor of contemporary science fiction cinema. A lot of people liken it, as Drew was pointing out in the pregame, to William Shakespeare's The Tempest. We can talk about whether that actually is anything or nothing. And it involves a starship that is landing on a far-off planet where they want to discover if there are any survivors of a previous expedition that landed there 20 years before, only to find the scientist played by Walter Pidgeon and his beautiful daughter Anne Francis, and no one else. So let's get started. Julia, we'll get opening thoughts from Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. Julia, go for it.
Gosh, I really liked this film a whole lot. It is I think maybe the first or one of the first big budget sci-fi films, and because prior to that, nobody thought that it was worth investing money in sci-fi films, and then after this, they were like, "Oh, actually, that worked out pretty well. People seem to really like this." But it's great. It has amazing effects, amazing art. The matte paintings, they're gorgeous. The sets are gorgeous. The effects are amazing. Great performances. Costumes are really great. The dresses that Alara,
Anne
is that how you
Francis?
pronounce her name? Yeah, Anne Francis wears are by a designer called Helen Rose, who also designed Grace Kelly's famous wedding dress and Elizabeth Taylor's wedding dress. So like the costumes are just exquisite. Everything is, and it's a really fun film. Like, it's really interesting. The plot is interesting. The concepts are interesting. There's definitely obviously some very old-fashioned concepts that maybe don't hold up so well, and we can certainly get into those. But yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. By the way, Anne Francis's name is Altera. I couldn't remember it. It was Altera, or Alta for short,
Is that what I said? What did I say?
named after the
I said
planet.
something like that.
I
Yeah,
think you came super close, but yeah, they're on Altair 4, and she's called Altera, just
Tara.
for the heck of it, because she was born there. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I like the film a lot. I noticed perhaps a few more things that I wasn't as enamored with this time. It could be the mindset, but boy, it's a classic for a reason. And there's a lot of great stuff. It's beautifully filmed. Colors really pop. I mean, it's really fantastic in so many ways. It's Robby the Robot sets the design for robots moving forward for a long time. Robot toys looked like him
Yeah.
to sell. Like there was, it's the same as when Star Wars happened, you had knockoffs of that, and Darth Vader-esque things, and R2D2 C3PO type toys, that kind of thing. So Robby really set the stage for that. Some beautiful effects, animated effects as well. A lot of hand drawn stuff on top, and the monsters
By Disney. A lot of that stuff was
yeah,
by Disney.
yeah.
Hmm.
Calling in Disney animators to do that, genius. Looks amazing. And especially towards the end, there's some really actually pretty heady themes going on. Once we get to really what's going on the surface, past the adventure or mystery parts. There's just great business all the way around. There's a reason why it's a classic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I dig it a lot.
Thank you. Drew, what about you?
I love this movie. I would put it in my top 20 all-time favorites.
Just
Like
movies. That's amazing.
yeah, I never get sick of watching this. The aesthetic is awesome. Like I like the costumes and the designs of the technology. The look of the Krell Underground, the look of Robby the Robot. The costumes obviously are really cool. Like I like the sort of utilitarian spaceman sort of space navy uniforms versus the high glamour space age stuff that Anne Francis wears. Like it's just a great look. The script is got some really good concepts in it. I think the characters are all fair. Like there's some members of the crew that are a bit thin, but most of the major characters are fairly well drawn, and most of the performances are pretty good. I know a lot of people are surprised when they watch this the first time to see Leslie Nielsen in a sort of serious action hero kind of role, but I think he's great in this as well. I don't know. Maybe it's the nostalgia goggles, but I really love this movie. Like it's a comfort movie for me. Like I never really get tired of watching it.
I think that's wonderful. I want to jump right into it. One of the first things I want to think about is the tone that this film sets. So people have talked about how Forbidden Planet is a precursor to Star Trek, and I think what they're thinking about specifically is the very, very, very naval aspect of this ship. It's the future. There's a ship knocking around in space, and everybody's calling one another by they're using naval terms all over the ship. They're calling one another by naval ranks, and
I mean,
that's
even the
exactly,
cook has a naval cook's hat.
yes.
And
He's
and
wearing
look.
a hat, and they call him Cookie for short.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
he has my grandfather got into the cook area because he realized like he told me you could get your meals first and you didn't have to do the same kind of work. So he's like signed me up for that. So he worked in the mess on a ship because of just the nature of the advantages of working in the mess.
Yeah, you have your own bill. You have your own duties, and
and you had to be clean all the time. So you got showers were priority, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
In the war, he caught on quick, and but yeah, our cook in this, he's Cookie. He's a traditional kind of Navy mess hall guy for these, what they say, 18 people, I think it is.
Yeah, and if you think about it, so this is 56, 58, The Terror Beyond Space. We saw that one, right? Same thing. You remember those guys? Because it is possible that you could have a different vision of what space exploration would be like, but in the 50s, and then I think therefore Star Trek, the vision is, it's just going to be the Navy in space. That's how it's going to work. And boy, is it. I mean, everybody calls one another by their ranks all the time. I love it. I mean, it's kind of fun to listen to because, and this is a very postmodern way to watch this movie, but you can just see all of the things that would become a part of our science fiction tradition today.
But not just ours. Like you think of like, you go forward to the 70s, you have Yamato, Star Blazers, and it's literally, hey, let's take a battleship that's on the bottom of the sea and send it into space, and where everybody's the space navy,
right?
Or like Macross, where it's UN spacey, and you have Army, Navy, Air Force spacey because you're in space. Like
that's
that
clever.
theme.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean that's the UN spacey is part of Macross and all that, and you'll see it elsewhere. But that's so that isn't how else would you make
Well, I
that?
don't
I
know.
guess
I
is how we.
it would only be aliens who would fly around in a ship and not have ranks, basically.
Yeah.
That like, but it's actually, you know what? It is possible. I've just never read a story like this, but you could have a ship that's organized like, the history department at a state university or something with like, a
I mean, you'll
chairman
see some of
and
that with science expeditions tend to have a little bit more, but
yeah,
usually there's science expeditions also in conjunction with the military, so you'll see
right.
that be a bit different.
Think of
I
like
think
aliens.
And when you break from that, you get things like perhaps like Battle Beyond the Stars, where it's ragtag,
Right.
or a little bit. You'll see a little bit more, I guess, probably than like eventually like Battlestar Galactica, where you have a military ship, but then you've also got a fleet full of civilians and how you deal with that, and their how they deal with military is perhaps different.
They have their own
But
civilian
but in
command.
this context, it doesn't like it's kind of one of those. Of course, it's this way, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the ship that landed here previously was also looked like it had more scientists and
Hmm.
it had different makeup from the way they describe it.
Yes. Yeah. They
I
were
think
like
Because
little
part
it
of
was an
houseboats.
exploration ship, and I mean this is firmly a military ship that's sending out to find them because that's what you do.
Yeah.
But
Drew, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I talked right over you.
I think part of the reason we see this ship organized the way we do, though, is this isn't that far away from World War II or the Korean
Exactly.
War,
Not at all. No,
and
you're right.
so the characters we see are they could have easily be Navy guys in a war movie.
Mhm.
They particularly y'all were talking about the cook, but he really seems like he just stepped out of like a World War II movie.
Exactly.
And
the way he goofs off and he's going after some liquor and stuff, like that's all like Mr. Roberts,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
the cook and everybody are trying to like go on land and go trouble the local women and steal a bunch of liquor and that's how you do until the war's
Or
over.
in this case, have Robby produce it for you.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
God, that's
Thanks,
so
Robbie. You're the best. That's
I was impressed that Robby said, "I'm gonna make you whatever it was, 60-something gallons, whatever it was of your moonshine." But he makes it in like these beautiful bottles that are like labeled
yeah.
and everything, instead of just like big kegs or whatever.
Well, he's
Robbie
known for
Breweries.
breweries.
yes.
It's a class act.
He's a
class act.
microbrew himself. He's just
Right.
going around. Yes. Anyway, I just found that fascinating. This and the Terror of Beyond Space to me just really show you how you are to Drew's point, less than a decade out of the Korean War.
Right.
So yeah,
But definitely we get the impression that the Bellerophon had a different kind of makeup.
for sure.
So
Yeah, they were like 2x2s basically. They were a bunch of they were pilgrims essentially.
it was kind of a idea was colonization.
Yeah.
And so there's a hierarchy, but it's not going to be you don't you send the military ship to go find them because
Yes.
that's what you do, right? And so
Yeah, which again is very similar.
Dichotomy is really kind of cool.
Yeah. I just noticed, by the way, in the cast list that James Best was among them, and I don't think I noticed James Best at all in there. He's probably just lurking in the background. But he is James Best, who was Roscoe P. Coltrane. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Roscoe.
that's
Yes.
correct. Yes.
Wow. I'm sorry. That was a reach, and I hadn't planned on it. So there we
Dukes
go.
of Hazzard for those
Yes.
for those who are younger than us.
Yeah. Also, the super evil sadist badass in Rolling Thunder, James Best. Yes. We should talk about the cast here. Now, first of all, Leslie Nielsen. I want to quote directly from
Baby Nest. This is his first movie.
Oh, is it really his first film?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he's beautiful. He looks great. He said in his own interviews, he goes, "I just remember that I had to make eyes at Anne Francis and I was really skinny." That was what he said.
He looks so different than he does
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Because we were looking up pictures of Leslie Nielsen, and when he's on Peyton Place a decade after this, in 1966 or thereabouts, he looks completely different. 10 years, and he looks
10
like a
years
totally
later,
different human being.
10 years later, he actually looks like what we think of Leslie Nielsen looking like in the 80s. But in this year, and I think it is because he was so skinny, he just looks like a completely different person.
Yeah. Bruce Wright
He's
remarked
still
in his
Leslie
book.
Nielsen voice though.
Oh God,
Oh,
yes.
really? Not to me.
I
I
think
felt like
so.
even his voice was different.
I mean, well, you know, the liquor and smokes are going to change your voice a little bit over
That's what I'm
time.
saying. That just
But
doesn't sound like. But anyway, what were you gonna say that Bruce Wright said or did?
well, Bruce Wright in his book Yesterday's Tomorrows, which by the way, we are publishing a revised version of, but he remarked that Leslie Nielsen filled the role of the commander like caulking compound, which I don't think is fair to Leslie Nielsen. He is, you know, he is a perfect. This script does not give Leslie Nielsen much to work with other than being manly. I'm serious. I
Right.
really enjoy this movie. I could watch it over and over, but like, does anybody know what Leslie Nielsen likes to do for fun? You know?
Well, but that's the whole point of you talking about how it's a Navy movie. It's like you never know. Hardly if you ever know what people like to do for fun, it's because they're troublemakers. But like you're not really supposed to know that. Anyway, go ahead, Drew. Sorry.
No, true.
No. What I was gonna say is like the one thing that we get versus like him versus the doctor and the really lecherous third in command guy.
Right.
Right.
Is that he vaguely seems more honorable than third in command lecherous guy, and he's not
That's Jerry.
yeah
The
Yeah.
lecherous Jerry.
who is a grade A creep.
Yeah, well, I mean, but still, even though he's a grade A creep, you still have Leslie Nielsen saying things like, "You're lucky. I've got 18, feisty
Perfect
men,
specimen.
physical men, and they would all love to do things I can't say right now because I'm kind of embarrassed." Like
Christ
that whole
almighty.
idea of like, "You're lucky you didn't get on the ship full of those 18 guys," is still kind of not looking at it now is like, "Whoa, wait."
Oh, it's extraordinarily
Still true at the end of the movie too, because she does
Yeah.
actually go riding with them back to Earth.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so-
don't. I have not been with current like ships full of men, but I imagine it's not that different now. I bet you if you have like a ship
yes.
full of men, not all men hashtag, but it's like I'm sure that if you're on a naval ship or just a bunch of like with a bunch of guys who have been by themselves for a year, they're gonna be kind of gross with women. At least some of them, maybe not all, but some of them. So I think that's probably gonna
Well,
be the same.
certainly Jerry is gross.
Yeah.
And then I'm not
Yeah.
the captain isn't sexist, but I mean, this is the 50s, and in the context of the movie, he's not wrong because you have Jerry being gross.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Jerry,
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh wait, you don't know about men? Oh, I can help you there."
Right. Well, and that's the
Aw.
other thing is that not only is she the first woman these men are seeing after a year, but she's never been with any man except for her father. So she doesn't know anything about men. Like she's completely clueless. So there is both the guy who's been going to be a little bit protective, but ends up, of course, making out with her, and then the guys who are like, "Oh, you don't know about us, that therefore I have an advantage here." That is, I think that's going to be the case in any.
There's
decade,
even
honestly.
Julia pointed out that there are bits of it that are just straight up comedy that was working in the 60s and worked through the 80s. Like the bit where Jerry is like at the buffet with Anne Francis and points at the other guys and go, "Don't trust them." Like,
Yeah.
That guy's
Oh,
had
yeah.
it.
All of
I
that-
said
Oh,
you could
yeah.
lift this whole scene and stick it into Three's Company and have it be Jack and Larry, and it would work perfectly well.
absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing that I always find interesting about this stuff is the way Anne Francis plays it, because yes, she is naive, but there is this part of her that's kind of, like she's never seen a guy. She's kind of lusty. She's kind of
Of course, yes.
experimenting, and
Well-
I don't know how much of that was in the script or how much is just the way she plays it, but she's like this weird mixture of being very knowing of her behavior, but also still having this kind of naivete about her.
Right, and part of me is just because I'm older now and maybe didn't pick up on as much when I was younger watching this movie. But knowing what I know now, all of that business is creepier when you have somebody who's hasn't fully formed. She's older.
Mhm.
she's of age, but still a part of her isn't socialized that way. And that's creepier. Like
Yeah.
taking advantage of somebody's naivete in that way is super freaking creepy.
It's
And I know
uncool.
it's not
Yeah.
quite, it's part of it's the norms of the time. There's a lot of difference, but like watching it through the eyes of somebody, you're still taking advantage of somebody in a way that's just really not
Well, that's
great.
against, essentially against, or at least not of their will. I mean, again, I want to go back to Mr. Roberts for a second, which is 1955, so it's a year before this. And that one, there is great comedy played out of the fact that the guys they went on furlough. They're now being dragged back to the ship by the MPs because apparently they've been, at some level or another, unclear how much, they've been sexually assaulting women the all over the island, and that's played for laughs. In other words, that there's an understand. If you look at Ski Party with Frankie Avalon, again played for laughs, that he's going to try to date rape his dates because that's just how you do. It is remarkable how much this is just a laugh. That people are like, no, that's what men are like. They're rapists.
Right,
It's
and that's something that goes all the way to Greece too. We see that there
right,
too.
right. And so anyway, I know that our listeners might go, okay, we get it, guys, but
Yeah.
this is fascinating. I mean, it is.
I think it's there's a lot at play there. It's just when you watch things over and over and you watch them at different times in your life, the way you perceive things changes. That's I don't want to be heavy about that, but it was
Sure.
This time was like, ooh, that's not in the same way that I saw that. I mean, she, it's obviously there's consent and everything with her and Leslie Nielsen, but
Right.
and we even have the like, yeah, she's better off with you, kind of thing from
Right.
Jerry. But it's still, part of it rings a little bit kind of still like, ooh, I don't know.
No,
But,
fair. But that's just the strange thing is basically the 50s ring strangely to us.
Sure.
The imbalance of power, the unspoken unfairnesses in all of this stuff. Yes, but
well, it also sticks out, I think, more in ways in this because it's the 50s, but it's the future.
The 50s in
Right.
space. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Yeah. Okay. So, well, while we're talking about the cast a little bit, we talked about Leslie Nielsen. We talked about the beautiful Anne Francis, who, by the way, also has a wonderful, very funny line that, depending on how you understand the line, could just be a really sick burn on Jerry, because there's this point where Jerry makes just some dumb sex joke, and she says, let me see if I can find it. She goes, "I can see that was probably very clever, but I don't seem to understand it." That's a sick burn.
It was such a great burn, and the funny thing is, we had literally just finished saying, "I don't get it." What?
Yeah.
Like whatever the line was, it had something to do with that. What was it? Do you remember what it was?
Well, it was I wish I could be Robby, but only for certain things.
Only for certain things. I'm like, is that supposed to mean that he would, like, Robby gets to be around her, but he doesn't want to be a servant, or? And then she said that thing, and I was like,
he wants to have all his man parts, not
yeah.
robot parts. Like,
Right.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Also,
but also
also
not.
the other sick burn is, despite his bravado and supposed prowess, she's like, I'm not really feeling this. Really?
Oh
Let me
yeah.
try again.
No, I know. She he kisses her
Mhm.
3 times, and she's like, nope.
I don't know what the.
She's like,
But
okay,
not
yeah,
the-
you can kiss. Nope.
Not so with Leslie Nielsen. Like, she feels the spark,
No,
but
she
with
definitely-
Jerry, she's like, I
Well,
don't
I
know my
mean,
He
people.
has
you
that. What did he
know,
call it? The stimulation, or something like that.
Yeah.
What
when
something I
Frank
can't
when
remember.
Frank Drebin lays a kiss on you, you
That's
feel it.
right.
He's a hunk of burning love. Leslie Nielsen is.
But yeah, but it was so funny. She's like, I'm not feeling any. What was it? Was it stimulation or some other word that they
I think
used?
stimulation
healthy
is it,
healthy
yes.
hugs and kisses for healthy stimulation.
Stimulation,
of the
yeah.
body.
So I'm not feeling it.
Oh,
And
yeah,
she
yeah,
totally
yeah, yeah.
gets it. With
Well, so this is the part, by the way. There's the mention of the equivalents to the Tempest, and these are the parts where there is something similar to the Tempest. I'm with Leslie Nielsen that I'm skeptical on just how Tempest-y this script is, but there are similarities to the Tempest, and one is the daughter of the wizard. The wizard is on the island. He has a daughter. The daughter has not known the touch of a man, and now here a bunch of them come, and there's a local monster, Caliban, who judges all of them. So that stuff is there. So I kind of see it, but I think if I were the screenwriter working on this, I would probably go, well, what if we used the raw, like the raw sort of quadrants of the Tempest, and then just built another story around it. So yes and no on it being the Tempest, I think. Walter Pidgeon plays Morbius, Dr. Morbius. Does anybody want to talk about him?
Is this the first time the name Morbius has been used in anything science fiction-y? Like, I couldn't find anything prior to this. So that means that Marvel Morbius and Doctor Who Morbius are most likely homages.
Not to mention the Matrix Morbius, right?
Yeah.
So
that's Morpheus.
Oh, it's Morpheus. I'm so sorry. Right, because he goes into the other world. Yeah, that makes sense.
But this is I don't know. I'm curious if there's anything more with that name before that, because I couldn't find it.
What I think is funny is I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, but what I do think is funny is how strange he is. In other words, he has that name that sets him apart from any kind of regular name that a regular American Joe is going to have, right? Even though he's played by an American actor, there's something that sets him apart. He has this name that suggests morphology, changing and stuff like that. And we've come to find out that he's not even what he really looks like. He's not even a regular dude anymore, because he's gone into this weird cerebro chamber, and he's done a whammy on his brain, and so he's now like he's now so overpowered.
Basically.
He's what?
He's basically super intelligent, because
yes,
he was he's a linguist, but now he can like robots.
Now he's. I was gonna make a stupid joke. Anyway, yes,
make a stupid joke. Go for it.
It was a joke. It harkens back to Jason's and my high school years. He's a cunning linguist. I know it's a bad joke, like I said. Anyway, and it's also why how he creates the id monster.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he gets, but just
well, that's what's weird is later the other people who got the brain zowie died, or would, and that's what happens to the doc. But with Morbius, he has super intelligence, but he also has a weird side effect.
And part of his side effect has become super smugness, which I don't know if he already has that.
Well, I find it funny.
He carries that around as like, oh no, you surely. I mean, look, I know that you're a good military guy, but you're pretty stupid. I'm not unlike me, where I doubled my IQ. You see on the brain meter in ways that you can't even imagine. But
God, he's a dick. Yeah, you're right, Morbius.
I've amplified my smugness in this machine.
Very early on, he proclaims that he's not like a pulp magazine mad scientist, but like literally every action that he does.
Yeah. Methinks thou dost protest too much.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all part of the id and ego monster, depending on what he's gotten rid of. Like he's. I'm not a mad scientist, but if I were, what would I do?
Yeah. Did he write a book? If I had done it, or whatever it is.
If I had been a mad scientist.
If I had been a mad scientist, here's how I would have done it.
The next thing I want to mention, and Morpheus kind of segues into this, is when they get to this planet. What did I say it wrong?
Yeah,
you said Morpheus, meaning the Matrix guy.
I just I apologize.
That's okay. That's
when they land on the planet, they figure there's going to be people around, but they meet instead Walter Pidgeon, who says, "No, it's just me." And later he reveals, "And my daughter. Everybody else died super mysteriously because a giant invisible monster tore them up."
Which is part of that's part of the Tempest thing, is that they're stranded on an island. That's why.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I like,
and
I
they're
like the beginning where they see, because he also tells them like, hey, don't come down here, and if you do, be prepared to have really bad crap happen to you.
Yes.
Like
and then he feels really, really bad when everything starts happening.
Oh, he feels super bad. Not really. If he had only felt bad. But like, I like how, when Robby first shows up, they're like, "Holy crap! Whoever is tearing ass through the desert really has no." Yeah, like, whoa. And then
Yes.
he
I
shows
love
up as a
Robby and his little
robot.
car. It's so cute.
And then he's a robot. They're like, "Oh, okay, it makes sense because he can go that fast and make those maneuvers and doesn't have to care about passengers." But then
Right.
I do. But then when they kind of just play the scene again, there are people in there, so you're like, "Oh man, they must have been." He's like, "Buckle up your seatbelts." Like, ooh, that must have been a wild ride.
Well, like the introduction scene of Robby, what I was like thinking about this time is like he has the line, the cook asks if he's a male or a female, and he says the line like, "Oh, well, in my case, it neither is relevant." And I was just imagining, like, if they put this out now, like suddenly we'd be slammed with a right-wing think piece of sci-fi so woke.
But that's
Because he's a
another
non-binary
Tempest.
robot.
That's
Yeah,
another
right.
Tempest.
Because he's
That's
a
another
robot.
Tempest delusion. That's
Yeah.
another Tempest delusion where it's Ariel, the spirit, the spirit that Prospero summons is a non-binary character. It's a spirit of air, and so that character is played by males and females. In plays.
That's
doesn't have
fascinating.
a gender. So that's what that's. So yeah, I was reading a thing about like why is this like the Tempest, and that was one of the things.
But Robby's correct in that yes, he's named Robby, and we say he could be Robin. We say that because he's got a male voice, and that's
Yeah, that's
also
right.
what they're keying off of too. Like, are you male or female? You sound male. He's like, I'm a robot, man.
You sound
I don't know
male,
what
but
to
you
tell
do. But you
you.
do.
Like,
You sound male, but you do housework. And
right.
that's
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so confusing to us.
Yeah. But he's his whole deal is like, I'm a robot. What does it matter? Like, I don't any of the functions that differentiate you between male and female. It's like a Roomba. A Roomba has the attributes you apply to a Roomba.
Yeah.
But when you get it in the box, it's a Roomba, and you can call it Sally the Roomba, or you can call it Harry the Roomba, but it doesn't.
Right. Yeah, it's a dumb
it's a
question.
Roomba.
It was just part of the trying to make it be like the Tempest.
And I think that's again, that's kind of fascinating and interesting that as a part of it. But it does seem to it throws them for a loop for a second. Like, what?
Yes.
Does not compute.
Yeah, exactly. But from the humans, because Robby's perfectly fine with just I'm a robot. I don't know what you want.
It's not true. And Robby can do lots of things. Because I want to talk about the world of Dr. Morbius, because for one thing, and Robby is at the center of a lot of it. Robby is at the center of all of Morbius's worlds on the surface. And one of them is Morbius has a big ass compound with a garden and a little lake and animals, but Robby sort of runs it all internally. Go ahead.
Guess where the garden comes from?
Where?
The garden was reused from the Wizard of Oz. It's the Munchkins' land.
Really?
Oh, nice.
They just repurposed it. I just thought that was so cool.
That's fascinating.
Also, I also like how Morbius is like, yeah, I made this robot, but since you're not a scientist like me, I don't get you. I made it as a whim, but you're not as smart, so I don't expect you to make robots or anything. Yeah, I guess you got some guns. That's good, but I'm not
worried about you seeing any of my secrets because you cannot possibly understand.
Yeah, I'm just a dude who just can make a robot that's amazing and can synthesize anything. But bring some guns here, and I guess your craft is cool, whatever. I don't know if you know I'm a scientist who can make a robot, or just because. It's just his whole thing is like, wow, man. But you're right. I joke, but he's such a great Walter Pidgeon plays that just so well. He looks the part, he just feels it, and he carries it so well. And even close to the end, when there's kind of a flip in that, because they do, it is nice when we get to that part. How his character morphs, he does balance this between, he does kind of want to be the dutiful father and protect the last person from the expedition, but he also because and again he even says like, hey, it's been a long time, I don't know how to interact with people. My guess is he probably wasn't the most popular person in the crew.
Well, no. And it's not
to the
lost
point where
on
they're
us
like,
that he murdered them all.
Stay home,
We're
leaving.
Yeah, no, boy.
I mean, there's even the possibility that they were like, "Oh no, things are really bad here. Should we take Dr. Morbius? Just don't tell him we're leaving."
Right.
No, he's got to stay here and fight the you stay here and fight the monster, man. We trust you. We'll come back for you, Dr. Morbius, because we couldn't do this without you, and you're very important. No, it's probably more because we find out, his relation to the monster, and that's why. But
a prequel would be good, and you would make it at your peril, by the way. But a prequel would be good where you could see that whole scheme play out, where everybody tries to escape except Morbius, and they all get killed. Although, if you were going to do it, you may as well have a couple people that you're following survive, because I can't stand any movie where literally everybody dies. But what are you going to do? Well, no, that's not true. Rogue One was not bad.
I think also if you watch...
spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, spoilers for Rogue One. Sorry.
In case you haven't seen that movie, no point now.
Now that I'm looking at this too, I kind of wonder how much Dr. Hans Reinhardt from Black Hole, played by Maximilian Schnell, is patterned a little bit off of Morbius in the way he interacts and what he's created and everything. Like, I didn't notice it as much until I was kind of going back through this, and there's a lot of I think they were going for a similar tone. By no means am I saying it's a rip off of Forbidden Planet or anything like that.
Well, no, but Dr. Smith as well, right? Because when you think about it, yet another guy who's kind of, he's here, but he's a pain in the ass. And
but if you watch Black Hole again, you'll see where I'm coming from. Yeah, I didn't put it together as much until I rewatched this.
What's interesting about this movie, I think, versus tonally, but also with the look of it, is this is actually a fairly decently budgeted, nice looking studio production that's taken fairly seriously, whereas like this is put out during a time where most science fiction films are fairly low budget and made mostly for an audience of children and teenagers. And so this is a precursor to a lot of things, not just Star Trek, but I think you can also trace Star Wars back to this too, because it's got this very immersive world, but the characters are also 100% invested in it, which there's not really at any point, with the exception of like the Cookie character, that you get a sense that anybody's sort of winking at the camera and making fun of the proceedings that are going on.
Yeah, that's very well said. This is played completely straight. It's not. There's not really, except in a couple of moments. It's not an ironic film. It's playing this stuff for awe. And the awe, by the way, really comes in when you get subterranean. We leave Robby behind, and Dr. Morbius shows Leslie Nielsen and Doc, which is Warren Stevens, around in this subterranean city, which is, to call it a city is kind of to underplay it. It is an enormous machine that it's huge, and it's been around for something like 200,000 years, and it's 20 miles square, and it's made up, and it's powered by a bunch of never-ending reactors, and Morbius understands fuck all about what it's doing. Like, it's just, and that is super chilling. There's something so chilling about this.
Really interested to know, because I couldn't really find anything about it, but I didn't research, but I didn't see anything just in what I was looking at. How they made the effect of that place, because it looks infinite. Like, it looks just it looks like the Matrix, like how in the Matrix when they just have all the people plugged in and it just goes on and on and on forever. The actual where the humans are actually being farmed. It looks like that. It goes on forever. And so this is amazing. There's so many neat effects, by the way.
This is the city of the Krell, the so-called
Krell,
the long dead. Yeah.
Their city, though. It's their whole power infrastructure, which made them powerful. So they basically built a planetary power source, and
But like
it's
I just do you know, Tony, like how they
yeah, I mean
make
it's
that
really
infinite look?
good. It's really good framing with really excellent matte painting,
Because
and
I
it
got,
is.
I mean, it looks like matte paintings when you're outside, when you're in the, but that didn't look like matte paintings. It looked
Oh,
like they were
that's
just
well.
like
See,
mirrors.
that's the just when you have really good matte paintings, and now we do it with CG, and it's fine. I mean, I gotta admit, I was sad. There's a documentary on The Thing discs, and one of the most prominent. And I apologize. I'm coming off spur of the moment, so I haven't done the research. But one of the most prominent matte painting guys in the biz did the matte painting for where the ship is in the ice, and then they're showing him doing other matte paintings for other. I want to say maybe Towering Inferno. I can't remember exactly. It's been a long time since I watched the documentary. But basically, on glass, which is the way you matte it, so that you can get some see through if you need to in with the set, and just his skill. I have to look up
But
this
also, there's
person's
got
name
to
and
be
post
some
it. But
kind of camera effect because they also look like they're coming, like when they're doing the elevator thing where it looks like it's going down
right.
from forever.
Well,
I don't know.
again, it's matte paintings in combination with props, with
Yeah,
really
with
planning your
small.
shot. Like
Right, right,
the
right.
the skill with which they had to plan the shots for those is
That's what makes
really
it look
amazing.
so great, this film. The other thing that was really cool is something called, I don't know if you've ever used this or seen it in modern day, but something called the traveling matte cut. Like, do you know what that is? It says that they would use, so for example, like with the tiger, when the tiger's jumping toward them and it gets killed, or other things. It's a superimposed film footage, and then they'd use a traveling matte cut. So it seems like they're just kind of somehow like it's a split shot, and then somehow they use something that I don't quite get it, but it sounds really
Yeah.
cool. Really interesting.
Yeah, and in fact, they make a allusion to that. There's if you watch Fraggle Rock, his uncle is Uncle Traveling Matt.
Ha!
Oh, that's
And
cute.
there's the fragment called gobo, which gobos are like the things you see, like if you want to make something look like it's quote unquote you're looking through binoculars. And so there's the black thing around it.
Oh, brilliant.
That's the
Right.
so
I'm
so
gonna
there's
remember
all this
Traveling
there's
Matt
all
because
this like
that's great.
geeky there's all these geeky film names in Fraggle Rock
Neat.
that until you know it you don't. But yeah, the Uncle Traveling Matt was like, oh okay, that's pretty
That's
good.
great.
Yeah,
That's really clever.
but yeah, it's where it's literally a matte. You matte out areas, and then you as you move it, so you superimpose. You're filming like several things, and you're moving it. That's the kind of high level version of that. But
Well,
it is
it's
involved. And it's
all
really
great
effective.
looking, amazing stuff. The fact that the tiger's never in the room with Anne Francis, it looks like it really is. I mean, I know that if you know what you're looking for, you can see like I guess the lines or whatever, but I couldn't see anything. It just looks so cool.
I thought it was really really gorgeous. There's an element about this great planetary giant power thing, that also powers all of this other ancillary stuff, like the machine that has multiplied Dr. Morbius's brain power. It This is where we are the most Bradburian, for want of a better word, where because he was super into this notion of like the Martians having great cities that were still running even though the Martians were long dead. Like that was an element that I swear came up in several of his stories, the that were gathered together. It feels so much like that, and there's something just always, even though these are made up people, it chills you. You get chills when you think of this great race that is dead and left behind these machines that still have power over us. Also, I find it unnerving when I'm looking at that animation in that scene where those elevator elements of the ship are just moving up and down all the time. Like, what the hell are those things doing? Like, what's moving? Why does it need to move? Like, that's freaky, because you're like, are there in fact still aliens moving around in their elevators, or
No,
are,
that's what he said. They made it so well
yeah,
that the machines just take care of themselves at this point.
they even rebuild themselves. They
Yeah,
they
I
even
like that he
yeah.
even said like, "Hey, well, 16 years ago, they totally did a revamp on everything."
Yes, the machine pushed an update. That was so random and funny and sophisticated for the script. Because think about it, it's like 1956. The idea of a system update that just pushes through, that's hilarious and weird. And I was really amazed by that. Hats off.
Even though he knows, and he's even though he's in with he knows more about it, and he's interfaced with basically the Krell knowledge
Yeah.
library all this time, even he doesn't know the inner workings. Like, he has an idea. He's like, something happened that it decided it needed to do a full update 16 years ago. And even I can't conceive of what that is.
Well, and there's other weird stuff, like their machinery or their instruments. The alien instruments react to the weirdest things, and that's where it becomes just strange and mystical, because he's like, the flights of birds cause it to like react. Your ship makes it react. Like I was like, wow, this thing is like V'ger, basically. It's just a giant it's just a giant intelligent rock that is looking around at the world around it. Wonderful. There's so darn much there. You could have lots more movies just messing around in this alien planet ruin thing. Yeah, I love that. I know that, let's see, we talked about the Krell. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we need to touch on. These have all been really themes more than anything else, but I guess we should, yeah, go ahead.
I think, it really.
Oh, the Id Monster. Sorry.
Yeah, it really starts to hit the sci-fi, like really hits hard with the sci-fi once he starts describing the Krell and what they left behind. And I think that really pushes the thrust of it. But we've also at the same time got the Id Monster, sneaking up into the ship, destroying things and killing people. All the business with the secret, like what is this Id Monster, what's it doing, and how they make a cast of its foot, but it's this.
Yeah.
And the fact that is crazy thing is the Id Monster. When we get that reveal is amazing.
I love the effect of the Id Monster coming through the laser grid that they have set up, and
it's fantastic. And again, that's Disney animators doing that.
And I wish more movies would be done this way, where they do traditional animation but just use it for special effects. There's just something really cool about this, because it's not just the monster, it's the guns, it's the like most of the optical effects are this
the tiger getting zapped.
Yeah, like all of it looks so cool to me. And I'm surprised that this hasn't been done more often, because it just has such an interesting look about it. It works really well, in particular with the Id Monster, because it is supposed to be this thing that is like summoned out of somebody's fever dream, basically. Yeah. And so it doesn't make any logical sense as an animal, but so the fact that it is animated, just adds a little layer there to it, a little touch of a slight touch of whimsy to it.
Absolutely.
But man, like, it's still 100% effective as a monster in a science fiction movie. When I was a kid and I first saw this, I was, completely scared of that creature.
Wow.
The time I saw it. And
I think it is powerful, especially because there is always something that like needles at your brain if you're watching a scene where the people have to use some atmospheric thing to make an invisible creature reveal itself, be it throw paint, throw dust, shoot it so that whatever. That just always, that there's a frisson that comes from revealing an invisible monster. And it reminds me a lot of the aliens in the dark coming after the robot guns in Aliens, where you're only aware of them when they get close enough to the guns to set them off, which is just works.
And the design of the Id Monster when it's coming through, it made me wonder if any of those animators were any of the animators on who worked on Night on Bald Mountain.
Oh, that's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought of when I saw it.
It looked a lot like the Chernobog, but also you see some of that same flavor in the even though totally different production company, etc. Like you see some of the flavor of that in the bull, in the Red Bull in Last Unicorn. Like that, the vibe of it has a very similar thing. By the way, on a side note, it was Albert Whitlock was the matte painter that I was thinking of, who worked on the Thing. But there's, I guess, some controversy about how much he worked on Thing. But I want to say it was probably like, I think he said he worked on like Earthquake, maybe was one he was working on. I can't remember which one he's painting in the documentary, but just seeing that skill and knowing that isn't done that way anymore.
Yeah.
Feels like the same way that traditional movie posters aren't done the same. And it's fine, we do digital, etc. But when you really see that tactile like craft, maybe it's just my nostalgia, I don't know, but I feel like, especially when I was watching that documentary, like that art, there's such just an amazing flavor to it. That I just really enjoy it.
So where was this a documentary about the making of Forbidden Planet?
Of the Thing, yeah. It was about the
yes.
Thing, but it reminded me of watching these matte, a true craftsman,
So I'm going to ask an ignorant question about matte paintings. I believe, only because like I heard this a while ago, but it still is difficult for me to imagine. Apparently these matte paintings are like placed on glass and you're shooting through them with the physical camera. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's unbelievable because it means they're quite small.
Like,
yeah,
look up the Thing documentary and you can see. I mean, there's many documentaries on. There's amazing matte painters that are all over. You can watch things about them, but yeah, it was on traditionally on glass so that you could etch out parts to kind of match. So that's how you get all that camera matching. The reason it's glass is you can shoot through the parts that are in glass and do perspective shots.
Well, they use it in Dracula when the stagecoach is moving towards Dracula's castle. There's this matte painting, but somehow it's all the stranger to me knowing that this is a tiny forced perspective painting on a piece of glass.
It's amazing.
A lot of it's also behind. I mean, it's not necessarily on the glass. A lot of it's the backdrop. So like in the scene where they're on the planet, they're inside a whole big semi-sphere matte painting that's just that kind of surrounds them like IMAX style. But yeah, on the sound, it takes up the whole soundstage, and of course they're using all of the scale, like it's like a 3/4 scale spaceship that so everything is just perfect. It's just beautiful.
Wow.
And there's so much planning that goes into that, making those amazing shots. And we have
you ever wonder,
great cinematographers now. By the way, Peter Ellenshaw was also a really excellent, if you look him up, a really excellent matte painter on tons of stuff that he worked.
So are there libraries where these matte paintings are laying around?
No, I mean these huge glass. That's the other thing is like, good luck finding some of them because they're these huge glass thing. So you might even like get rid of a matte painting and reuse that glass. I don't know how often that was used. I want to say I read somewhere that was done off and on because it's huge sheets. Depending on how you're shooting it, these are large scale paintings.
Do you ever think about these props? Like those paintings, Robby is a suit essentially. Like,
sure.
I know that got reused through the 50s. Where is it now? Is it still around? Like does somebody still have?
Robby is in the hands of a private collector.
Right.
No kidding. Wow.
And there was only one suit. That's the thing. If they had done this now, they would have made dozens of suits. So
actually, it's in the private collection of the director, of William Malone.
Nice.
What? That's what IMDb says.
Director of House on Haunted Hill, 2000.
Unbelievable. Well, good. I mean, I have no doubt that he'll take good care of it. That's fantastic. I wonder.
But a lot of these props, like also like, so for example, like Harryhouse and stuff, they would cannibalize the armatures again. So only X amount. Also, the foam decays.
Sure.
So a lot of them would decay. One of the only props, actual characters that's still around was the skeletons. And that's why you had these excellent versions of skeletons you can buy because their construction, if I remember correctly, was partially paraffin. It was made of things that just don't decay the way foam does.
Right.
So you had skeletons still around, but a lot of the other props, either they had been cannibalized for the armatures because it's tough to make them. So you want to reuse those because they're good. You don't have to craft them again, but also the materials were such that you can't really preserve them unless you're trying it, or you make a cast of them. Which wasn't. Why would you do that at the time? Like, you don't know how popular the movie's going to be. A whole. It's so weird to think of. I mean, if that might be if you were a time traveler. If you had a time machine, you might go. If you were I could just picture some archivist like, and here's all this. If you were, especially if you're like a collector like Del Toro,
yes,
who does collect all this stuff,
that
you might
itself,
become a person who goes, no, I took this and now I preserved this certain way because I just couldn't fathom that it actually doesn't exist anymore.
That sounds like its own Ray Bradbury's story. The notion of an archivist from like the 24th century going back to old Hollywood to get ray guns. I mean, that's
right.
That inevitably, by the way, there's going to be a morality play in there somewhere.
right,
but,
of course.
But yeah,
well, part of it is like, oh, you could save the Library of Alexandria, and yet you have a room full of like Cyclops and ray guns and King Kong accoutrement. But whatever. I'm not here to judge our hypothetical time machine traveler.
Look at the sets. Like, I was thinking about this as Walter Pidgeon is leading the Doc and Leslie Nielsen around, and they're walking through like that like quadruple blast door that opens in different directions, and they go through it.
They reminded me of the Satellite of Love and the
yeah on MST3K.
Yeah.
It's so amazing to me that somebody had to build this thing. There's probably grips back there making it move, right? But all the staircases
that's an
and everything,
amazing piece of work, and the way
and
it
all that's
melted
gone,
later,
right? I mean, you would
Yeah.
either tear it up or tear it down or reuse it maybe in the next couple of months. But I presume that it's not there anymore, and it's amazing to me that we can build these beautiful things. You capture them on the film, and then they're gone. So yeah. Okay. After they basically they discover eventually that Leslie Nielsen discovers that the id monster that is killing people is Dr. Morbius, because of a logic trick that they set up earlier in the screenplay, which is that Robby cannot shoot Morbius. And therefore, when they say, hey, Robby, shoot the id monster, Robby can't because he's going to short circuit. And that means, therefore, the id monster is Dr. Morbius. Brilliant.
And supposedly, if the order isn't canceled, he'll kind of blow all of his circuits.
Right.
But
like
then
somebody that
he ends up
Kirk
like
out logics. Yeah.
He ends up like flying the ship later, so I guess he's fine, even though
presumably he shut himself down. Yeah.
Yeah, even if he was damaged, he is a machine. They could, in theory,
he could fix
repair
himself.
him.
Yeah, maybe. But if he was down, if he was like totally fried, then he couldn't. I don't know.
But it's cool. He's got either the robot, if you will, the RoboCop rules where he can't shoot, a lawful person.
What's
the three rules?
Yeah, the laws of robotics.
Yes.
Yeah,
Asimov's rules of robotics.
Right.
Which, as far as I know, we're not building into anything we build today.
No.
Yeah, that's why we're gonna have for sure.
We're gonna give
Terminator
goddamn
and
M16s
iRobot.
Yes.
As far as I can tell, and usually the excuse is, well, I mean, you have to program it to do blah blah blah. Like,
no.
Yeah.
No, not if it learns.
If it learns, yeah. That's assuming we don't have the AI that we are also creating.
Yes.
Like, come on, man. Oh, dude, program. It's the same thing I deal with this in tech all the time. Well, that shouldn't do that. Yes, should and shouldn't carrying a lot of weight in those. Well, I've never seen it. Shouldn't do that. Well, it's doing it right now. I don't know what to tell you. But what you don't want to find is that it shouldn't shoot anybody or drill holes in their skulls. That's weird. Like, it shouldn't stomp them to death. I didn't program it to do that. Yes, but should doesn't matter to the pulp people or the shot people or the drilled people or the disintegrate. Like, you don't want to find out should or shouldn't be happening when it's chaos and mayhem. And this is just me dealing with computer crap.
Yeah.
Every time I see that stuff, I go, "Oh, you have to program like blah blah blah. You have to." There's a robot that hit all these like pierced people and things that I was reading about not long ago. What it shouldn't have done that. But it did. But come on, at least Robby is good. Like he's follows through on all this. Like he's programmed exactly, despite the mad scientist way of things. Robby is true to all of that.
Yeah.
Although we don't see what happens after he short circuits and reprograms himself. He might have left some of those parts out.
Right.
We can hope that he didn't, but we can't prove that he did.
Oh yeah, Robby. They use Robby because he's such an expert pilot to get the ship out fast enough to avoid the explosion. Is that right? So Robby's extra, basically being an automatic pilot is going to be way more skilled than the Earth pilots.
Can I backtrack
Oh yes.
a second? Because the bit about them going back to the idea that Robby can't hurt a human being is the way they reveal the identity of the id monster. I love that so much. It's such a simple but elegant bit of writing, and it's good sci-fi. It could easily be an episode of out of an episode of the Twilight Zone.
Yes,
that sort of aha moment. But it's one of my favorite things about the last act of the movie.
I agree with you. It's amazing.
That is really good.
Yeah.
I for all of his kind of smugness and all of his bravado, you do actually kind of feel for. It's partially because of the Krell experiments that he didn't even know what was changing in his mind.
Yeah.
Morbius. But when he really kind of finally does or understand the gravity that it could kill his daughter and that it was actually what killed the crew, because he's done mental gymnastics to go, no, it was this monster, and I can't be beholden. If you land here, monster's probably going to come back and look, oh, it is. Look what you've done.
Yeah.
But when he truly realizes that he's kind of been duped in a way unintentionally, although we don't know that the Krell weren't kind of like, hey, if any lesser creature does this, we can't guarantee their safety. So, screw you, primitive creatures. Like, we don't know that they didn't have that, because they seem to, they definitely destroyed themselves or backed themselves into a technological corner. But it is pretty great when he truly goes and he try to reconcile the stuff that's been changed in his brain and the stuff that he's actually doing, and how he's kind of lost control of all of that. His own empire is crumbling in a microcosm of the way the Krell empire crumbles.
Yeah, that's right.
And he thinks, he's kind of convinced himself he's better than that. I can learn from this. I'm not going to make those same mistakes. That was on them. What I know, I think I can make this better. And him realizing that he really can't, because if they couldn't do it and they were, 2,000 centuries ahead, then what can a human do? And that's why Leslie Nielsen's character goes, hey, we gotta come back for this. Like, this is too big. But the realization that, and why they're okay with it being destroyed, is like, we can't handle, if this guy can't handle it.
Yeah.
And it's, it becomes that corruption of the innocent kind of thing, where this is too much power for a person to have.
Well, it's so interesting that is a long way and a correct way, and all of that is exactly right what you said. But it gets you to a very traditional ending to this form, which is the film, where you tend to blow up the big thing that you're in when you leave it. Right. Isn't that interesting? In other words, they work all these ways to like make it all make sense, but what you're left with is a big explosion, which I think is it's kind of wonderful. It's like seeing a ballet sort of come together, and all of a sudden you're like, I get it, and because it's going to wind up the they've got, if you push that button over there and turn this thing over here, it's a self-destruct sequence.
Jason was like, shit, maybe it shouldn't be that easy, especially if it's like irreversible.
Well, it's as surely.
I like how, the Krell left behind this it's not several switches. It's like, pull up on that, push down on that.
No, turn this dial and then push this thing that's super easy to accidentally push. And then it's like, oh, can't turn back. I was like, well, at least there should be, if you're going to have an auto-destruct thing, at least there should be that helpful countdown that goes, okay, if you want to cancel, I suggest you do it now because you've only got 10 seconds left.
Right.
Well,
like, nope, no canceling.
This speaks volumes also to the hubris of the Krell.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course, we wouldn't push that. We only would push that if we really meant to. But what about a back? Like, you sure you don't want to, like, a little bit of leeway? What if the janitor does something. Oh no,
No, not gonna
2,000
happen with the
centuries
Pro.
of trial and error have led us to flip this, push that, goodbye.
No
Like,
turn, no. What's it? What do people say about no turnbacks? They say no backsies, no backsies.
yeah.
Right.
Although, you know, and the fact that he knows that is also interesting.
Mhm.
Like, of all the secrets that he doesn't know,
It's in the handbook.
right? Exactly. But of all the secrets that he can't fathom, part of how this all is, and I know part of it's just kind of plot stuff, but it is interesting that
Yeah.
the part of the knowledge and part of it that he studied, because he's been studying this as well as gaining knowledge through the device, is if things go really, really, really badly, do this thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, I think
That's amazing.
interesting.
Yes. So yeah, they blow up in an amazing explosion that the ship is racing away from, just like Star Wars. Isn't that remarkable? I mean, I that's another thing. I'm trying to think that, and somebody, one of our listeners, if they're listening, go ahead and please tell me I'm stupid. If you can think of an example that I'm just forgetting, where the ship is racing away, planet blows up behind it.
Well, I know there's more, but
Before this? Before 1956?
I will
Maybe.
say that I've seen, you know, like black and white serial things, you
Maybe.
know, which is also Star Wars bars from that. But again, this is why I love to say, don't just, you know, I don't want to preach too much, but there's a reason why you go back to older movies and see where you can go, this is the earliest version, or this is one of the earliest versions of this. Like, see where the people that you enjoy their movies, where they got their ideas from. You
Yeah.
keep going back, because that also gives you a point to branch from.
Yes.
In the
Well
same way
said.
that your
I like
idols do. Whereas if you just kind of go, I want to make things like X director, their ideas came from. I know I've preached this before, but if you go back, and this is also why, you know, at first, like when I was younger and I had to take art history, I was like, oh, you know, why am I spending all this time? I'm going to do computer art, blah, blah, blah. Or why am I studying 20th century art? I don't like this artist and that artist. And once I was in that is where I started, like, the palette. You open yourself up to a much broader palette once you're able to do that. If you're an artist, there's times when I've been able to use that knowledge that I gained through, we didn't technically get a minor in art history, but it was the coursework was as if you got a minor in art history. And there's been times when I was able to use that, and at the time when I'm paying through the nose, it feels like for my education,
Mhm.
oh, I gotta have to take this, you know. Well, if you can broaden that knowledge, and you have so many different ways you can jump off of, and put these little touches that will make, you know, there's nothing new under the sun technically, but your approach, your own unique approach to things, can change that art. And so if you can go back to and you see, like, oh, well, this is how Forbidden Planet did a robot and a matte painting and a, you know, running away from an explosion. Like, oh, well, that's where so and so got this.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And that,
Yeah.
I think that the way that clicks in your brain and how you can branch off of that is different than if you just go back to your direct one generation, maybe one generation removed idols.
It's a really good point, because a lot of people like to, for instance, quote from Greece without bothering to look at, you know, Rebel Without a Cause and The Wild One and so forth.
And by no means am I saying you can't create good art if you don't do that, or
Right.
that you have to watch everything. You know, life is short. Do what you need to do.
Yeah.
But the idea that you can learn and craft, I think the more that you do that and add those bits to your, like I said, your palette, is what gives you you can develop perhaps a more unique feeling vision, because it's how you process it that's gonna you know, change that. And also, you know, if you do that, you're ahead of the game for people who don't, right? Wow,
Right.
that's really neat. Like, yeah, well, I ripped off all that. I mean, you'll see people that you love, and you'll go, that was really cool. And they'll go, oh, I totally ripped that off from you know, 1964's blah blah blah.
Well, my favorite is Potemkin, when in The Untouchables, when
Sure.
Brian De Palma didn't get the money from the studio that he wanted to do a big train chase thing that they were going to do. And so what he opted for instead, after doing some thinking, he said, I want a staircase and a baby carriage.
Right.
And that was just borrowed. It was completely borrowed suspense bit from Battleship Potemkin. and it's wonderful. By the way, that was like 30 years ago now, so somebody could do it again now, and that would be fine, probably. Yeah, I love that. I love just the sheer creativity of going just a baby carriage and a staircase. That's all I need to do a good scene.
And if you know film, then you're like, oh, that's Potemkin, you clever bastard. And then
Yes.
if you don't, it still works for you because it's still super simple.
Yes.
Because you're, it's effective and
Yeah.
suspenseful. Sorry, I don't know why my words are.
But it is
that
simple,
way.
and that's though, to me, that's what makes your jaw hang open in admiration is when the scene is simple and works.
And it has so much suspense
Yes.
but it also it builds suspense because you've seen it. Like,
Right.
oh, that works. I'm just gonna lift that because boy, oh boy. And it makes you kind of sad sometimes too, though, if you see somebody can't quite get what made something work and they make a version of it and it's not as effective.
Yeah, that's true.
And that can happen. And I've done things where it didn't work out quite as well, but it's interesting. But it works for people who know. And then you're like, okay. And then it also works because that's a tried and true way to build that scene.
Yeah.
So,
but I liked what you
that's
said
great.
about this thing where you can, and I can try it in my writing, where you can try to borrow a plot beat and it might work great, or you might totally blow it somehow. And to me, both of those are fascinating. If you go, why didn't this work? That should have worked, and there's some element that's just not firing, and it's that's fascinating to me. Anyway, in the tradition of Hollywood, Nielsen and Francis get away with the crew. They're headed back to Earth. So this girl, who is now 20 years old, I guess, is headed back to Earth and is going to figure out what it's like to live on the extremely peaceful, futuristic, and heavily populated Earth. And that'll be super fun.
Also, what's interesting is we get the idea because you have 18 people in this ship for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's probably some redundancy because that's what you'd hope to build, but they've lost a lot of people. So kind of the idea I got, maybe I'm wrong, maybe we're just not supposed to think about it, is thankfully they have a Robby who can do multiple things and is
good point.
Super fast computer because they've lost components as well.
Yes, that's a good point,
as we're told. So
can we take
Robby
a moment on that?
Sort of, is they're lucky to have him because he possibly can help out that way. And going back, I do want to mention one more thing. I really like what they've kind of thought out. There's some things that we go, oh, that's kind of primitive. That's a very 50s way of thinking about starship navigation or the physicality of the ship.
Yeah.
But I really like that they're like, hey, we're about to slow down from light speed. Never mind all the temporal problems with light speed, right?
Right.
Where they're gonna come back to Earth several hundred years later or 1,000 years later. But even if that's not the case, they're like, hey, we're going to slow down. So get in these chambers or else you're probably just going to get smashed through the ship.
I love that.
And I thought that was like...
That was really cool.
I thought that was an excellent idea. And it's something I haven't seen much. Usually just, whoop, I'm out of hyperspace. Yeah. And maybe you say strap in because we're coming out of hyperspace. But in general,
well,
like,
inevitably, the ships don't have like any kind of restraints. So they just kind of jostle around in their seats or standing up. They jostle around. It's like, I thought that was great.
But getting them all into these plasma chambers, that was really wild. What I wanted to say I admired and seemed like a very lived experience for the screenwriters was, oh, hey, we've got to do something special with our communications equipment to send a farther message. And that means we're going to have to take some shit apart and build it. Right. Neat. That sounds like an engineer. I mean, that sounds like a real engineer going, what can we use on this? So that's somebody who was in the Navy. There's a hole in, and we have to shore it up. And we already shored up a couple other things. So we don't have any logs left, because we carry logs to shore up the top of the hatch. And so we're going to have to make some logs by taking some chairs apart and building logs. And that's, wow.
Well, it's also the world building of, you have your chief who's rebuilding stuff and your engineer and you can imagine going, oh, well, so-and-so is coming on your ship, can you trust him? Like, well, if anybody can redo a thing and do this thing, I trust that guy. Like, that's the kind of banter that would set up that character. I want him on because I know if things get rough, like he can build a blah, blah, blah out of toothpicks,
Yes.
and that's that's how they built. That's how that crew kind of works.
Yeah.
And when he's telling, and there's no like, hey, this thing's really broken. When the monster comes in and breaks things, and again, they kind of set it up because Morbius would know what to break.
Yeah.
Therefore, his id monster knows what to break.
Yeah.
And that's until you get the flip. It doesn't maybe register in the same way. Like, oh, it just wrecked some things. Well, that's unfortunate. Oh,
Yeah.
but it wrecked these certain parts. Why is that? And eventually you reveal that it was a very targeted attack, even though it seemed really random, like a beast. And that's actually a really nice setup. As you once the flip happens, once the twist is revealed.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything I missed? And if not, we can just do our final thoughts. But what a fun movie to discuss. I really love this one. All right, let's go around. Julia, we started with you. And if there's anything we missed, let me know. But final thoughts on Forbidden Planet.
Well, I mean, I think the only thing we missed really is talking just about the sounds and the music, which is the whole electronic score. I don't think we really talked about that. We talked about it a little bit before we started, but it's the whole the fact that they use the theremin, like probably overuse the theremin, but I love theremin, so I appreciate that. There's some interesting sound effects that the sound guy created. Like, just he had his own little soundstage thing that he put together with a bunch of different. I'm trying to find his name. Anyway, I don't know if I find it, I'll tell you. But anyway, so that was kind of interesting, and I suppose that, your mileage may vary as far as whether you like it or not. But no, I mean, I think we've gone over a lot of what I thought was worth talking about, which is just how beautiful it is, how expensive, the quality of the performances, and the fact that they took it so seriously, the costumes, that the little mini dresses that that Anne Francis wears, and that got the movie banned in Spain because it was too sexy. Yeah.
Wow.
For like for like a decade they wouldn't show it in Spain because her mini dresses were too many. I think it's just a really great piece of really great piece that is a must see. I think it's on several must see lists, actually. So I enjoyed it, even if
That's
it's not
wonderful.
really technically horror, but I guess it's there's a monster.
Boy, there's a monster. There's an id monster.
Yeah.
so we'll go with it. Castle of Horror is like Castle Frankenstein magazine. We can talk about anything under the sun. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I really like a lot of this movie. I mean, I think if there was any kind of downsides, like the score and the sound effects were a little bit more jarring than I remembered them. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a lot. But I think it's also because it sets the tone for the movie kind of being a lot, right? So doing something so different at the time, we see and we hear some of those, similar sound effects, later. This sets the tone for what sci-fi sound effects are like for quite a while. There's a lot of kind of, here's some jargon, but at least it's sci-fi jargon and not pseudo tech jargon, which I find to be even more grating. Like, what? You used the 256K modem?
There are some weird things.
That will forever date your movie. Like, he put a 3 gigabyte hard drive in his brain. Like, that's not much for the future, but okay. So the techno babble can, like, Rain was watching for her. She's like, this is super gibberish to me. I don't mind it as much because I watch a lot of sci-fi and I watch a lot of, especially like I watch serials, I watch all kinds of stuff. But there is a lot of
that's a good point.
And your mileage, you may think that's great, and that's what the 50s future sounds like. Or you may go, that is, again, you might also agree, and like that's just a lot of just talking at me with random things. That's either going to be good or bad.
They use several words I didn't even know at all. It might have just been gibberish. I'm not sure.
Some of it is, but your mileage may vary on that. But I think it's beautiful. I think there's a lot of great stuff, and again, it's emulated. This becomes a touchstone and a branch for so much sci-fi after it. That again, it's going back to the classics is always pretty fantastic. Great cast, politics of the time, and are definitely it's of a time, and you may or may not dig on that. But I think as a whole, it's still well worth your time, well worth revisiting. It seems like there's one for War of the Worlds, and I had to look it up. It's kind of a shame there's not a Criterion or a 4K version of this. I think there's a Blu-ray that's pretty inexpensive, and it looks great. I rented it on Amazon, so I could pay a little money that way. But it looks great. I would love to see a 4K copy of this, just for the matte paintings and the special effects alone would look beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I like the tip on the disc. Drew, what about you?
Like I said, this is a big time favorite of mine. I get comfort food movie for sure. Something I noticed this time, I guess I didn't bring up when we were discussing it, but it talks about its relevance as far as the horror genre goes. Some of the stuff that of the id monster entering the spaceship when it takes on its sort of POV shot, like that feels very reminiscent of what happened in slasher movies later on. So I mean, this is the creative link in a lot of different chains, and it's just such a well put together movie. Like every time I watch it, I get something out of it, even if it's just the visuals. But man, like I could talk about this for another hour. We're not gonna, but I could.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I have zero things to add to that. I've definitely talked enough, and I think you guys nailed it perfectly. So instead, I'm going to move on to endorsements. Julia, I don't know. You and I watched the same thing lately. That's just how we roll. So I don't know what you're going to endorse.
Yes, you do. What did we just binge watch the crap out of?
Well, yes.
We just watched a Netflix series, limited series called The Stranger, which, even though he's not the main character, I'm going to go ahead and say stars Anthony Stewart Head, because he's my favorite. Giles. But anyway, no, but it's really, really well done. I mean, it's just like I just wanted to watch the whole series in one night. Just like, we really should go to bed, so we watched it in three nights, mostly 2 nights and a little bit in the third, or 3 days, I should say. But so good, so riveting. The end was like a tiny bit unsatisfying to me, just the very last bit, and we can talk about it later, Jay. But the rest of it, I was just like, this is so good, so riveting, so interesting. So that one is my endorsement this week.
Wonderful, thank you. That actually was going to be my number one guess. All right, Tony, what about you?
I don't have a lot because I've been super busy with a bunch of stuff and trying to set up, trying to align everything for recording the next Deserts of Mars LP. Because with everything the way it is, it's hard to get all the pieces together. And our engineer Jeff Henson from Duel is building a bigger and bigger engineering roster and bands that want to work with him, because he's awesome. So I've been trying to get all of that together, as well as line up a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to think. Ray and I have actually been watching a comedy we really like called Still Game. It's about pensioners in Scotland. My parents go to Scotland. They were going every year. They just went back and just came back. They had an extended vacation, and they turned us onto this. It's on Netflix, called Still Game, and it's really good. These pensioners in a not so great neighborhood in Scotland, and it's definitely of its own time, but I think it's got a lot of great moments in it. I'm trying to think what else I've been watching. A lot of random stuff. I did crack open the Seventh Curse
good
set, and wow, the booklet, everything, that's a presentation. I hate that it's harder to get. If you are looking to get it, if you liked our Category 3 Hangout episode version of Seventh Curse, but wow, poster, all the presentation on that. I want more of that. Oh, and also I need to post it, but forgot which company. There's a company releasing early Santo movies that I'd sent you,
yes.
Jason.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
I'm on that so fast.
Yeah.
I need to do that. Oh, and there's a 4K version of The Changeling coming out too.
That looks amazing. Yes.
So that will probably be like the third time I buy The Changeling, which I've done that but like I really do think probably 4K is gonna. For UHD is most likely going to be one of the last formats of physical media, in my opinion. I would love to be wrong because I like collecting physical media, but as far as the way streaming is working, or depending on if you're following the news, maybe not working. If you're creative, it's a mess. Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but I really do think 4K really pushes our kind of upper limit of collecting and what that format's going to be. I mean, maybe it'll move to some form of 8K disc. I don't know, because we have 8K TVs, but once you get to a certain point, you can only see X amount. Like 8K is kind of the top end of that currently,
right?
Because there's only your eyes perceive X amount. And that's like at the top end of that. There'll always be nice, archiving a print in the highest format possible is always great, and I hope we continue to do that. That's harder again with digital. Like, it depends on, if it's only digital, never gets burned to physical media, you're at the mercy of so many factors, which is as a collector makes me a little bit queasy, because there's still tons of VHS stuff that never made it to DVD.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. Like what's going to happen with? I mean, maybe they'll make it eventually. But yeah,
we'll see. But I am excited about the 4K version of The Changeling, because that's a great film, and things that move from film to 4K, if it's done right. And that's a big caveat, because if you Dolby noise reduction it down and mess with it too much, it can be terrible as well. But scanning from film or from really good masters to UHD works sometimes better. If in the right hands, it works better than if it's shot in 4K and then goes to 4K. Even though that seems kind of weird, it tends to be better. But it really depends on who's mastering it and all of that. There's not disparaging at all, but I'm hoping that it looks good. But all indicators point to that's the thing I'm going to be buying. So
that's a good tip. You also sent me that Al Adamson's Dracula versus Frankenstein is being released on Blu-ray from Severin.
Yeah.
And that is a grungy, ugly, depressing looking movie that I recommend.
You can get it on disc.
And so
which I'm the weirdo. Like, I should probably have less stacks of things in my house.
Shouldn't we all?
But it's hard to not have more stacks of physical media. The only thing I don't have stacks of is vinyl, even though I love the look and feel and the artwork and everything about vinyl. Like that, I had to draw a line somewhere. Like, am I gonna also collect stacks of vinyl and have a turntable? And I made the choice to go with smaller form factor.
Yeah.
But sometimes I regret that when I see it really nice. Like, they made a Godzilla box set that that and Voivod, one of my all-time favorite bands, just released a set with like
now we've only got
discs and
so many
all this stuff. Yeah. and Rain could leave a much smarter lifestyle. I'm the weirdo with all the physical media. Anyway, that's probably too long-winded, but I appreciate everybody coming along for the ride.
No, that was great, and now I want to order at least one of those things. Drew, what about you?
I've been enjoying the new season of Primal, which is a Adult Swim show about a caveman and a dinosaur that have teamed up and become sort of an action duo. Very simple, elegant, mostly dialogueless telling, beautiful animation, beautiful character designs. Like, this might be what is the peak of TV animation on TV right now. Like, it's just freaking,
it is beautiful,
gorgeous. Yeah. And it's a show that you can watch with the volume completely down and no subtitles on and still understand what's going on. So there's something to be said for that.
Is it weird that also kind of makes me, I'm really dating myself as far as newspaper, but it kind of makes me want to go back and read Alley Oop.
I don't know
Now
if
that I
Alley
think
Oop
about it.
had quite so many decapitations in it, but I
Right.
get what you're saying.
Right, but I just like it's like, oh man, you know what was a thing, alley oop.
Yeah.
Oh, I also should endorse that Fantastic Fest released the film lineup. If you go to fantasticfest.com. And so I don't know about press yet, but I'll still be there. So if anybody sees something and you're like, what is that? Or that sounds cool, let me know, and I'm going to try to cover and talk about as much as possible because I love Fantastic Fest and I think it's back in a major way. I'm instantly like Shin Ultraman, hell yeah. That's one of the first on my list, but there's a lot of great sounding horror just from the trailers and the descriptions. So I should repost that, but boy, I'm pretty stoked about, in September. And I try to find things, that I can recommend. That some of it's hard to recommend because who knows if it has distribution, but also I like finding those things and saying, hey, watch for this, because that's well worth it. Some things get picked up by Shudder. There's still stuff from years ago that hasn't been picked up by any American distributor, and that's a shame.
Oh yeah,
because there's some really great stuff. And there's also for anybody who's not going to be in Austin or can't commit to the cost, there is a Fantastic Fest at Home streaming component that you can do for a lower price. So if you're looking to get the film festival experience in some form, I mean, it's not the same as watching it with a bunch of people and kind of having that shared reaction, but I go back and forth on that lately. Also your comfort level, depending on your safety level. I'm double masked everywhere, which is my safety level. But having the ability to virtually do film festivals like Chattanooga and Fantastic Fest at Home, that's an option. And I think that's really cool because you may catch something that become your new favorite film ahead of the time people see it, but also not just that kind of like I'm in before you kind of thing, but you might see something that might be the only time you can see it, short of ordering a Blu-ray from another country or something. So that's always good. And again, Drew, hopefully I didn't step on your toes too much, but I just thought of that as something that is in the future and we talk about a lot throughout the year. So
Okay.
Wonderful. Drew, I'm sorry. Did you have anything else to endorse? Or
I really enjoyed the recent Amazon. I just finished it like a day or so ago, but the Amazon TV series version of A League of Their Own, I particularly really to the point that I praised it on social media. The season finale is so tidy that it could be the series finale, and I am a real stickler that unless you're sure that you're going to be renewed, that's the way you should end your season, to where every character gets a satisfactory end to their arc, and they certainly did that with this. So my hat's off to their writing department because I just really appreciated that.
that's so wonderful. I guess we do need to watch that. We haven't watched it yet, but thank you for sharing about that. And I did read
No
your
problem.
Twitter feed on that, and that was really cool. I did want to mention the thing that Joya mentioned, The Stranger. The funny thing about these series is on Netflix that's part of. Basically,
Harlan Coben. Yeah.
Harlan Coben, the thriller writer, has this sweetheart deal with Netflix where many of his books have just been adapted into miniseries. They're all like 5 or 6 or 7 episodes long. They're made wherever the hell they're made. Some are made in England, some are American, some are French, but they're all Harlan Coben thrillers. And what that means is they are all about some family in a nice neighborhood where somebody has a secret that is blowing up and destroying all their nice neighborhood lives. And they're so much all the same that sometimes I'm like 3-4 episodes into one of them and I forget which one I'm watching. Like I literally can't remember. It's like, wait, is this the one where she used to be a stripper, or is this the one where he was once upon a time a gangbanger? Whatever, they're all the same. I love them all, and so that's that's all I'll say about.
is this the one where that person has secret id monster?
A secret id monster would actually be Except for the fact that there's never anything supernatural, that would be a great idea.
Not with
But-
that attitude.
Yeah.
No.
Oh man. All right. Well, we are going to take a couple weeks off. For those who are listening, we will be back on the 18th of September, unless there's some emergency that drives us to the microphone or some other interesting thing. But the plan is to take 3 weekends off. So, because I got to turn in a script, and all these people have government contracts to see through and get back to the United States without anybody noticing. So we're just going to take a couple weeks off, and then we'll be back. God only knows with what. Thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody. Good night.